Imagine this. One night you are sleeping peacefully in your home, and the next morning when you wake up, your entire town is drowned in blood and fire. Your father and brothers are executed, your sisters are dragged away, and your mother is shot in front of your eyes. And then you realize this is not just happening to your family. It is happening to your entire community, your whole people. This is not a movie script. This is a true story. This is the tale of ISIS and the crimes that left a permanent scar on human history. The genocide of the Yazidis, the slavery of women, the abduction of children. This is a story of blood, tears, and cruelty. And we will uncover it step by step, through every dark chapter. At the beginning of the 2010s, the Middle East was already drowning in war and chaos. Both Iraq and Syria were caught in violent conflicts. Out of this chaos, a new and terrifying organization emerged. ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. ISIS was not just another militant group. They declared themselves a caliphate, seeking to rule over all Muslims of the world. Their method was pure terror and bloodshed. Wherever they gained control, they would first execute opponents, then enslave women, and finally turn children into tools for their ideology. By 2014, ISIS had captured vast areas of Iraq and Syria. That year, one of their most devastating attacks took place on Sinjar, the homeland of the Yazidi people. The Yazidis were a small religious minority, with beliefs distinct from Islam or Christianity. To ISIS, Yazidis were infidels with no right to live. In August 2014, when ISIS fighters stormed Sinjar, the Yazidis were caught off guard. Entire villages were surrounded. Thousands fled towards the Sinjar mountain, which became a symbol of survival, but the journey itself was deadly. Scorching heat, no water, and no food killed many children and elderly along the way. Those who were captured by ISIS were given three choices: convert to Islam, ISIS's version of it, live as slaves, or face death. Most who refused conversion were executed. In just a single day, thousands of Yazidi men and elders were massacred in Sinjar. This was the first step in a carefully planned genocide that shocked the entire world. But the killings were only the beginning. What followed was even more horrifying: the systematic enslavement of Yazidi women and the abduction of children. ISIS did not see them as human beings, but as spoils of war. And this is where the darkest chapter begins. A chapter where honor, dignity, and humanity itself were crushed. August 2014 became the month of blood for the Yazidis. When ISIS fighters stormed Sinjar, their first target was the men. The strategy was clear: eliminate the men so that the community would be left defenseless, with no protectors or leaders. Village after village was surrounded. The men and elderly were separated from the women and children. They were lined up and sprayed with bullets. In some areas, they were marched to the edges of pits, executed, and buried in mass graves right there. Eyewitnesses later testified that in just a few hours, 300 to 400 men were slaughtered in some villages. Bulldozers covered the bodies with dirt. Some victims were even buried alive. These graves would only be discovered years later, when Sinjar was liberated. ISIS did not hide these crimes. They proudly filmed the executions and spread the footage online as psychological warfare. Their message was simple: this is what happens to anyone who stands against us. They used distorted interpretations of religion to justify the killings, declaring Yazidis as kafirs whose blood was lawful. This twisted ideology gave them a sense of religious duty to murder. But even worse was what happened to the women and children. Once the men were eliminated, ISIS turned their full attention to Yazidi women and girls. They were dragged away in trucks, while the villages were looted and burned. Young girls, even as young as 9 or 10, were taken to special camps. For the Yazidis, the Sinjar massacre was not just a military assault. It was the beginning of a genocide. A genocide that targeted not only body, but souls. Those trapped on Sinjar mountain waited desperately for rescue, starving and thirsty. While inside Sinjar, the world's darkest crime was unfolding: the creation of a sexual slavery system unlike anything seen in modern history. Once the men were executed, Yazidi women and girls became the next victims of ISIS's cruelty. Fighters rounded them up and loaded them onto trucks and buses, sending them to detention centers and camps. ISIS justified their actions through a twisted belief: that enslaving infidel women was permitted. On this basis, they created a systematic slave market. This was not hidden, it was openly organized. In these markets, Yazidi women and girls were sold like property. Fighters and commanders purchased them, often treating younger girls as more valuable. Children as young as 9 or 10 were auctioned as virgins. In some cases, fighters held lotteries to decide who would win a girl as a slave. Every survivor recalls the same horror. The first step was always rape. Women were assigned to fighters as rewards. Many were repeatedly raped daily. Those who resisted were beaten, starved, or threatened with death. This sexual slavery was not random, it was a policy. ISIS leadership encouraged it, telling fighters it was their right. Women were sold multiple times. Some survivors reported being sold to 5-10 different men. ISIS even advertised these practices in pamphlets and online. They listed prices. An older woman was cheaper, a young virgin cost more. It was one of the largest modern-day sex trafficking systems, run openly by a terrorist organization. Pregnant women faced even worse cruelty. Many were forced into abortions. Children born of rape were often taken away, either killed or handed to ISIS families to be raised as children of the caliphate. For survivors, the psychological wounds were even deeper than the physical abuse. ISIS constantly told them, "Your people are gone. You will never be free again." These words still echo in their nightmares. It is estimated that over 7,000 Yazidi women and girls were enslaved. Some escaped, some were rescued, but thousands are still missing. Their pain is a wound that has not healed, even today. Among the most heartbreaking crimes of ISIS was what they did to Yazidi children. Once separated from their parents, the children became tools for ISIS's future. Boys were taken to camps where they were forced to convert to ISIS's version of Islam. They were told their parents were infidels and that their only loyalty should be to ISIS. Then came the training. Small children, some just 10 or 12 years old, were handed rifles and grenades. They were trained to kill, sometimes forced to practice on live prisoners. Videos surfaced of these children, nicknamed the Cubs of the Caliphate. In front of cameras, they executed prisoners, while ISIS fighters cheered in the background. This was meant to terrify the world and prove that even the next generation belonged to ISIS. Girls were also taken, but placed into different camps. They were trained for domestic slavery or forced marriages, prepared to become the wives of fighters and bear children for the caliphate. Families were destroyed in the process. Many survivors recall seeing their own brothers return as strangers, brainwashed, calling their sisters infidels, and threatening to kill them if they refused conversion. This was not just the loss of children. It was the erasure of an entire generation's innocence. Yazidi children, instead of being nurtured, were turned into weapons of terror, and the scars remain to this day. As ISIS was gradually pushed back between 2015 and 2017, the true scale of their crimes began to surface. In every area liberated, the ground revealed its secrets, mass graves. The first grave discovered near Sinjar Mountain shocked the world. Excavators found layers of bodies, men, women, and children. Some had their hands tied, evidence of execution. Tiny shoes and clothing of children were also unearthed. So far, more than 80 mass graves have been uncovered in Sinjar and surrounding areas. Each grave told the same story. Men shot and buried. Families exterminated, entire villages wiped out. The United Nations declared ISIS's crimes against the Yazidis a genocide. This was one of the rare times the UN so openly used that word, recognizing that the Yazidis were targeted for complete destruction. Human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch documented survivor testimonies. International media reported stories of women who escaped slavery, and their voices moved the world. Some justice followed. Courts in Iraq tried ISIS fighters, though these trials were criticized for lack of transparency. In Germany, a landmark case convicted an ISIS fighter of genocide in 2021. For Yazidi families, the graves were both evidence and heartbreak. Many stood by excavation sites, waiting for DNA results to confirm if their loved ones were buried there. Each discovery was a painful reminder that their suffering was not over. The world reacted with sympathy, but action came slowly. Thousands of Yazidis remain displaced in refugee camps, still searching for missing relatives, still unable to return to their destroyed homes. After the genocide was exposed, the biggest question was, will justice be served? The UN officially declared ISIS's crimes to be genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. But bringing perpetrators to trial proved challenging. Iraq captured many ISIS fighters, sentencing some to death or long prison terms. However, survivors criticized the trials for lacking fairness and for ignoring their testimonies. Germany became the first country to convict an ISIS fighter specifically for genocide against Yazidis. In 2021, Taha al-Jumili was sentenced to life in prison. This was a historic moment, with Yazidi survivor Nadia Murad testifying in court. Nadia Murad herself is a symbol of resilience. A survivor of slavery, she refused to remain silent. She spoke before the United Nations, wrote her story, and in 2018, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Today, she continues to fight for her people's rights. Still, justice is slow. Thousands of Yazidis remain in refugee camps, unable to return home. Sinjar is devastated. Schools, hospitals, and homes destroyed. Survivors struggle with trauma, especially women who escaped slavery but face stigma in their own communities. The Yazidis now fight on two fronts. Justice, demanding that every ISIS fighter be held accountable. Survival, protecting their culture and religion so that they are not erased from history. The genocide has drastically reduced their population. Yet, their resilience shines. Each year they continue their rituals, rebuild their temples, and send a message to the world. ISIS tried to destroy us, but we are still here. For humanity, the Yazidi genocide is not just their tragedy, it is a test for us all. If justice is denied here, then tomorrow it may happen again to another people.
The case may be closed, but criminology never sleeps. Like and subscribe to join Criminology and step deeper into the dark with us.